Hi, this is Paul. Just want to make a little video about a few things in the corner that you may or may not have seen because, of course, the channels are small and not that many people see it. Christian Baxter just dropped a clip from Rigel Thurston about the TLC and what he appreciates out of it. And I very much agree. Yesterday, I was watching The House of Woo, and it was fairly late at night. I was driving to call. Oh, I gotta make that. I gotta post that video in the membership section. Shoot, it's still on the camera. But you know, House of Who, I love how Mark starts it. I love the relationships that are blossoming. You know, it's fun to see Tim the Marylander working out his stuff with the usual cast of characters, and then all the way to the end of it. You know, this is a 4-hour stream that Mark was doing, and again, most times no more than between 5 and 15 people watching, maybe 2 to 4 people participating. McMo came on, and Mark then sort of ended with a really beautiful story about a story that he hadn't told to the channel before. Now, if you haven't seen Mark's, oh, where are they? My story, lightly edited. It's really nice to see that and then see this little story that I'm going to clip and just play here. But again, just really lovely to watch people work their stuff through. You know, similarly on Luke's live stream yesterday too, the guy from Brooklyn came up. I could immediately tell he was from the East Coast by his accent. I, grew up in New Jersey, but somehow I failed to get the accent through most words. Every now and then somebody will spot it. If I say one particular word or another, they'll say, well, why did you say the word that way? But again, just really appreciating having a space where people can come and talk to one another and, not get crazy advice, but have listening ears and encourage one another. That's so needed. And I was really thinking about how and why I made this comment before. Let's say if we were all living in a village together and, we had to raise a barn, or we had to sort of take turns harvesting each other's fields where we would be working side by side, but we're all sort of distributed in these little 4 walls with these boxes, and we have these electronic mediums. But to me, these videos are a way that we can actually be virtually not alone, have some degree of community, and just encourage and enjoy and work through stuff together. So yeah, there's just a couple little clips from recent live streams.
Okay, here's a story I've never told the corner. Okay, I'm full-on Buddhist, pretty much. This is also 2016. I go see Garcha Rinpoche. I have Donald Trump gets elected. 2017. I'm full-on Trump derangement syndrome, as they say. I'm really deep into that mindset. There are the camps along the border. Remember where they were putting the kids? They were collecting the kids.
Oh yeah.
And putting the kids in the camps, the holding places, until they tried to figure out what to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a period in 2017, at the end of 2017, I believe it was. Or was it 2018? These years blend anymore. It's part of old age.
TDS will do that to a guy.
TDS. Trump, yeah, exactly. It all blends. It was all one lump of pain.
2016 for a decade.
It's like a mass. It's like a mass on your neck. It's just there. 4 years. It's just grew into a tumor.
No, it's more like a bad toupee, right? It's a bad toupee.
Anyways, that's all behind us. Anyways, whatever the years were, the camps are still active. They're in Texas. And I'm doing really long walks just as part of my health regime and practice. And I decided, well, I'm going to do a kind of walking meditative protest from California to one of the big camps in El Paso. I think it was El Paso, Texas. Calculated the route, figured out how I was going to do it, hitchhike part of the way. I'd live stream it as best you could, or Facebook it, or whatever. I had ideas. I was prepared to go. I was within probably weeks of launch. It would have been really stressful and hard. My marriage, my wife, like, at first she was supportive, then she's like, at the end, saying, "You're insane. I need to take time off and follow you. You're going to get hurt." I said, "Don't worry. It's going to be fine. It'll be fine." And I was going to bring my full Buddhist / Christian influence, but I wasn't. This was before the cross event, so I'm still kind of more. I'm in that in between zone, but I'm probably more Buddhist than I am Christian. Anyways, I was going to do this walking protest. My mom had her first big seizure that took her down. She had an event, some kind of neurological event that completely derailed the plans, because I was the one who I had to cancel everything. I was tethered to her. I could not leave the area because, for one thing, she couldn't drive anymore. They were told under the force of law was told her license was more or less suspended, and you're going to not, because we don't know if you're going to do this behind the wheel, right? So, and first signs of dementia, full on dementia, start to show up at that point. So my plans to do some grandiose, megalomaniacal, monomaniacal sort of enactment, some grand gesture for all mankind, got smashed against the rocks of my family obligations. And it was decide, am I going to follow this big vision, or am I going to do the grind of taking care of your mother? And then it became the grind of being, a family man. And it's just like, over the subsequent years, my faith has been enacted, not through anything grandiose and big and miraculous, but just through the day in and day out work with my mom, and then with my kids and family. I mean, but that's just that grounding force that family brings to your situation. So, I mean,
yeah, that's like, it almost seems like, because it's a work out your salvation with fear and trembling, but it's a look to the birds of the air and the flowers of the field in regards to something like anxiety, or whether that be anxiety for your needs, or anxiety for like your biological needs, or anxiety for your social needs. There's a sense in which, it's a sin to worry. And so what was striking me about that story is the way in which, looking back, you could say you had no need to worry. Like you were planning your grand gesture, and you said you were going to bring your full self to it. And I was going to correct you and say, "No, Buddhist Mark, it's your empty self. You were going to bring your full emptiness to the,
yes.
But there's but it's just so fascinating and beautiful to me, and encouraging to see the way in which God had you completely hemmed in, kept, and held to exactly where you needed to be and for what you needed to do. And it wasn't the type of glory of, say Christ's ministry, that the part of Christ's ministry that's written down. It was the glory and the secrecy of humble, non-grand service, right? You were washing feet more than you were, healing the blind in that moment. And, it's safe to say, obviously, Christ did both. And it's also to say that you can't do one and not the other and be Christ-like, right? Like, well, actually, no, that's not true, because I think that you don't have to heal the blind to be Christ-like, but there's no, the spiritual gift of washing feet is incredibly democratic and populist. It's like anybody can wash feet. And there's even ways in which I remember the John Piper actually talking about this in regards to him going on and on about the importance of the glory of God, is that even a paraplegic can give glory to God and serve his neighbor and love his neighbor in ways that don't require that much creativity, if only you see that as your primary purpose and goal of life. But yeah, the main point I was trying to make was just the way in which you told that story. It was so crystal clear that it was God who kept you from, it wasn't your wife, it wasn't your mom, it was God who
Yeah.
kept you from your pilgrimage.
Right. No, it's well, and it was, and I think that process, that failure to complete this commitment I had made to myself, at the very least, to do this grand gesture, that failure was forced through a very, in a way that drove, it was forced through an ethical obligation that was higher, and that ethical obligation came out of my Christianity more than my Buddhism. It's one of the things that I like least about the Buddhist origin story is that the Buddha leaves his family to find enlightenment. He abandons his wife and child in search of realization. Now they get out of it by saying, well, he was very rich and they weren't abandoned to the elements. The child and the wife were abandoned in a palace. Okay. But that's not good enough for me. For the same reason that I'm not happy with any form of realization or heaven. I'm not chasing after salvation. I don't want any form of salvation that requires me to leave my wife and kids behind either, for the same kind of thing. It's not, I think, what Buddhism, William just said, Buddhism isn't moralistic. It isn't. It's certainly not, certainly in its origin story it isn't. And I think the working out of that whole situation with my mom and that pilgrimage, as you put it, failed pilgrimage, is part of what drove me back to the cross. Because there was a certain level of dead endness for me in Buddhism. There was like, this isn't happening. I need something better. It was back to that whole thing where the cross appears in that vision, and my response was, you take it, because that's where I was at. That was all happened within that window of time, I guess.
So this next clip is Brooklyn Lou. And again, I really appreciated this. Brooklyn Lou clearly is someone who gave up the faith and has appreciated and achieved a degree of freedom, and he's not expressing his disappointment at giving up the faith. He's listening to these Christians talk, and they're processing it. And again, to me, this is so different from Christian YouTube. And I've been watching the ongoing development of the Joe Rogan, Wes Huss, Billy Carson business, and I saw how the guy who had Billy Carson and Wes Huss on, and Billy Carson hasn't talked to him, and they live in the same neighborhood. And so on one hand, I think it is, I don't see how the guy who hosted them nor Wes Huff did anything wrong at all in terms of just clarifying. I mean, I think they approached it in a completely beautiful and appropriate fashion. But again, the victory laps, I'd like us to just pull back off that a little bit, because it's no fun getting kicked in the axioms either way. And I definitely want a space where you might say, compare and contrast T Grog with Brooklyn Lou. And in some ways, epistemically they're in the same conference, but the manner in which they approach the conversation is much more open and fair enough. I know many people who have given up their faith or walked away from the church, and they say, "Yeah, I don't worry about the will of God now. I just basically try to do what's right, and if it works for me or if it makes me happy, I do it, and I find that to be a better life." And yeah, Brooklyn Lou is by no means the first person I've ever heard make the points that he made. But again, this appreciative inquiry of people checking notes and comparing with one another, that to me is worth so much. And if we can, because in many ways the pubs or the town square or the barn raising or the field clearing are no longer with us in the way that they are, how valuable are these spaces where, it's not just sort of a cursory edited space. It's, again, key is the size here. You couldn't do this. I mean, part of the reason I'm playing around with estuary groups up for my Friday live streams is to try to figure out the best number. And right now I'm playing around with 6 people on screen to see how well that conversation works. Maybe 6 is too many. Maybe we can do more. I don't know. It probably depends a lot on who is there and how they participate. This Friday I'm going to have one with CRC Voices people. But to me, this is what I find valuable. And this is what I find, really encouraging and helpful. And yeah, I really like it. So here's Brooklyn Lou and his reasons why giving up on religion and church, why he finds it an upgrade, and how the group responded to him. So enjoy, and a little bit of branding after that.
Luke,
What up?
you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I've been watching you. I subscribed to your channel a little while back. Just today, I wanted to ask one question, and I'll get out of here.
Okay.
The thing with like you were talking about being contrarian,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you're also talking about church, right?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, you might be contrarian, but obviously the church must play an important part in your life,
Mm-hmm.
right? You were talking to a priest. So
Yeah.
I guess the only question I have, and it relates to trust, all right? Ultimately, when you're making a decision on something in your life, do you submit to the authority of the church, or do you actually trust in your own judgment fully? Because I know for me, I mean, I just, again, speaking for only myself, and I don't think there's a right and wrong, but I don't ever seek the advice of a church or a God or any of that. I'm an atheist. So
Mhm.
all I do is consider my own judgment on a situation. So I'm just curious. I mean, ultimately, I would be my own God, so to say, right? Because I'm making that decision for myself. All right. Do you make decisions for yourself, or do you seek other people or institutions to make those decisions for you? And that's my only question.
The ultimate priesthood of the believer.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna give you a question you're probably not gonna like, which is yes.
It's okay. I'll answer the best I can.
Yeah. So my answer to that would be yes. So like somebody asked me the other day, and I brought this up with my priest the last time I got together with him, of like, what would you do if your priest or the Orthodox Church or something got to the place of like just said like, Luke, you shouldn't talk about universalism or you shouldn't do whatever. And I don't know if I know how to answer that necessarily, because I have I have two convictions about things that I think are they seem like they're in tension, and they are, but I think that they have a higher unity that's above the tension, which is like my own personal conscience, and then what is perceived, that is the teaching of the authority of the church and what that means. And like when I brought this up to my priest, I said, I brought up that somebody had asked me that question, and I said, it's a little interesting to me because my understanding in Orthodoxy is not that there's not some kind of like broad position on it. Like they maybe have a position where it's not advised for priests to speak about any particular thing from the pulpit, which I think has been a lot of my pushback on universalism, or even that's a lot of what Jacob was saying in his stream, which I think is probably true if you're trying to absolutize an opinion on something. But like I don't know. Here's the thing, Lou, where I'll agree with you. I don't think that it's possible to say that if like I have an opinion about something and the church would have a different opinion, could you submit to their authority? Well, you could, in a sense. You could just say, like, I am not going to insist on my own way and to keep saying the thing that you don't want me to say. But that doesn't change your opinion. Your opinion is still what it is. Like you can either shut up about it,
Right.
which could be submission, but you can't change it because you are.
I do think you're going to have the same opinion regardless, but your opinion gets squashed in the way it seems to me. Like if I make a decision to do something and to share my honest thoughts, but I have to submit to an authority, it's kind of like my opinions and thoughts get squashed by the authority above me. See, I know this is weird to Christians, I think. I don't have any authority. I'm my own authority. I don't go to anyone to ask to do. I'm serious. I really mean that.
I believe that you're being earnest, but I don't know. I don't know that is completely true. This is the way I'll frame it. This is the last thing I'll say, and I'll see what other people have to say. I think a lot of this has to do with self-control. So there's this sermon that I posted in my community stuff recently by Chris Green that is excellent. And he essentially said in there about 3/4 of the way, he worked his way there, but he said kind of like the pinnacle of Christian virtue has to do with self-control. And self-control is a little bit of a paradox. What the hell does that mean? Self-control. What part of the self is controlling the self? Like that seems to be there's some kind of unity among like a internal split. Because there's part of you that clearly wants to do something, but there's another part of you that doesn't, hence self-control. And that's what I think within the Christian frame, or you could even say it within like a family. If a child, I've said this a lot before, but like my son, if he's hitting his sisters and I tell him not to, and he just submits to that authority when he's young, even though he doesn't want to, and he's angry and he's resentful about it, and he's only doing it because I tell him to, and he fears my authority and that I might discipline him somehow. That's not the goal that I want. That's maybe a step towards the goal, but it's not the goal. What I want him to do is to trust me and to obey me and to do what I want because I have a wisdom that he doesn't yet understand. And ultimately, I want him to not want to hit his sister.
Right.
Like that's different than just like a mere submission. That's a different thing.
And I'm trying to relate. I really am. I'm trying to relate and see a difference that I'm looking at when I watch Christian men talk about how their decision-making processes, right? A lot of times I'll hear, well, I'll go pray about it, right? And I don't have a problem with that, but I see it as a difference. Like for me, I don't pray about anything, all right? If I have a decision to make, I don't go to other men to tell me what to do, all right? I literally, and I don't even have like too many relationships with other men. I mean, I'm pretty much alone in life. All right. So it's not like I have this council of people to throw my ideas off of. Right. All right. I just
you do right now
on myself by myself. That's all I do. All right.
Is that by your own choice? You want it that way?
I trust my decisions. I'm not making them wondering if I'm making the right decision or not. I could make wrong decisions. I have made wrong decisions, but I trust fully the decision I'm going to make just based on rational thought. All right. Where I think it seems like the Christian mindset is you go to a God who's going to then inform you, or you go to the priest who's going to inform you, or a bunch of men who are going to inform you. Now, I could be wrong, and that's why I'm just throwing it out there, all right? Because I don't do any of that. I just make a decision, and I live with the decision.
Mm-hmm,
Right.
mm-hmm.
And my ultimate authority, and I sincerely say this, and Christians, can get mad at this, when I talk online with people. I make my own decision. So in that way, I don't believe I'm a God, a supernatural, but in that way, I am my own God. I make my own choices. All right. And I'm just wondering, do you submit your thoughts to something else, whether it be a God or other men? And that was basically my question. And I'm gonna shut up now and maybe listen, and that's it.
Okay, one more quick thing. I'll say this in like under a few seconds. Even if I were to submit myself to some other thoughts, who's doing that? I'm doing that. I'm making that choice. So ultimately,
Yeah.
it's the thing that I most value because I'm doing it.
Yeah, no, I know that
So
you're
the two
making
are
that
one
choice.
then.
Yeah, but it's a choice I'm not making. We're just making different choices, right? All right. But yeah, I understand that you're choosing. If you're doing that, you're choosing to do that. All right. I don't make that choice. I trust myself.
Sure.
And that's it.
Sure.
Can I tackle a little of this?
Yeah, hit it.
Oh, welcome, Lou. Pleasure to meet you.
Hey.
Yeah, I think, I don't think I'm essentially different than you are at all. For like 99.9% of my life, I think the decisions I make today, a lot of them are informed by past experience and relationship, all these different stacks of experiences. And like I'm not like, for instance, here's a good example. So like I had this job opportunity that scared the shit out of me. I'm like, I don't know, man. I didn't see it as a job opportunity. And in fact, I thought it was probably the opposite of an opportunity. But I had something within me. I don't know if it's consciousness or whatever. Who the fuck knows? Was I had a very strong thought that perhaps it was God. I don't know how to describe that thing, but it was like, every time that you've ran up against something that was difficult, sometimes there was something that caused a tremendous fear in me that would either hold me back so I didn't get hurt. And then sometimes when I've actually made the approach and actually walked through and did the thing, something incredible has happened on the other side of that. And so that's why, like, I had this job opportunity. I had a lot of fear around the job because I didn't have certain experience. And so whatever that feeling was, that, yeah, Sherry says a still small voice, whatever the fuck that is, I listened to it, and it turned out to be far greater of an opportunity than I could have imagined. So is that, listening to the authority of God? I don't know. But what I do have, like when I am consciously going into prayer or some sort of practice or meditation, I guess for me, one of the things is it helps me in my relationship with other people as I move throughout the day in my daily life. And so it's nice to have kind of like this little spot that I can just kind of get into some sort of disciplined practice. So I'm really pragmatic with that. I also have a deep understanding that's far deeper than just pragmatic. So there's shit about it that I don't get and I don't understand, but I really don't have to because I just have an experience with it. Now, I would say, like, if somebody in your position, if you're not having any difficulty, then fuck, that's great. Like, it's working out for you. Badass, dude.
It's worked for about 12 years.
Yeah. So like that works, then work it, dude. I mean,
I don't have an insecurity at all.
Right.
I just was curious of how people who do believe in God and do believe in, the counsel of wisdom amongst other people and all that. I just wonder how they negotiated. Because personally, I don't struggle with it.
Right.
I make firm decisions, and that's it. And I'm content. And I personally find it easier now as an atheist. When I was a Christian, because I was most of my life a Christian, I used to, pray about things. All right, let me stop. I don't want to make a decision. I want to think about it carefully. I want to pray and then get some sort of a feeling like you maybe described, a contentment that I attribute to God. All right, and then make a decision. Where now I find myself being more clear and concise in my decisions, and not at all thinking that they could be perfect. All right. That's not what I'm even seeking. All right. I think maybe as a Christian, I was seeking more of a perfection. All right. Now I'm not. I'm just making decisions to the best of my ability and letting it go. And when I make a choice, biblically, I guess says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. All right. It's like, when I make a decision, that's it. It's like I move on, and that's the end of it. Right.
Yeah. So like a lot of the Christianity, like that now becoming Christian over the last couple of years for me, I did notice that it causes a lot more difficulty for me to make, try and discern like who is right, what is right, whatever. And so like the more I get caught up in that shit, the more I feel separated from God. But I think generally for me, like a guy like me, like I need to be grounded. And so what I found is a lot more, although it can be confusing and a pain in the ass oftentimes, other times, especially when I'm in a relationship with my fellows here, I can find a lot of like there's a security there in so it's like this ineffable type of security that helps me feel connected across just across the way. So yeah, I think that's for me. I mean, because honestly, and also I feel compelled. Like that's the other thing. I feel compelled. Like I don't think I could in good consciousness just turn my back on God. I mean, in theory, it makes a lot of sense that I'd just be like, well, fuck all this because you guys are fucking whack and I feel like crazy, but I can't just do it. Like it's weird. So
well, it's a weird place to come to when you turn your back on God, right? It is definitely something that people, I think, can struggle with. They might have trauma, all right? And it can be traumatic, all right? So it definitely has something a person has to go through, all right?
All right,
On the other side of it, once you go through the traumatic thing, all right, there seems for me, and again, I only speak for myself, but for me, it's much more clear, all right? My mind is more free and clear because I'm not seeking to appease other people. All right. Now I take into account people I love, et cetera, and I'm not being cold. But once I decide something, it's just done and solid. I don't think about, well, what does God think about it, right? Because that used to be a thing that I could contemplate for months on end. At least for me, when I was a Christian, I could contemplate, for months on end. What does God think? God, please show me something that I know I'm making the right decision. Whereas now I have more confidence in my decisions. Again, I don't have insecurity in my decisions. I make a decision, it's final, and I feel good about it. All right. I feel I've thought it through. I feel I've done the best I can with the decision, and I just feel more comfortable. And I wonder, I will say I'm my own God, in that way. But when I wasn't my own God, I found it more complicated. And that's all. I mean, I know this is amongst Christian people, this is crazy, right?
No,
It can be crazy to a Christian person to try to understand what it's like not to trust in a God at all, right? But there's another side. If you talk to probably people like me who don't believe in God, I think you'll find a lot of them have good lives, right? And I'm sure some have horrible lives, because whether you believe in a God or don't believe in a God, your life can be horrible or good. Doesn't matter, right? Christians suffer trauma. Atheists suffer trauma. Everyone is dealing with things in their lives, regardless of what they believe, right? But, ultimately, when I have found that not believing in God has helped me mentally, all right? And that's, I guess, from a secular perspective, right? But it's helped me mentally to become a stronger man, all right? Because
all right, I wanna bring in Rigel and C Money, just because they've been in here for a while and they haven't gotten to say anything.
By the way, I'm gonna go, but I'm gonna listen. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Lou.
We'll have to talk more later. I have more questions for you too.
And I appreciate you.
All right. See you, buddy. Thanks for coming.
All right.
I'm so tired of all the fighting. I'm tired of pushing what won't give. I see you weary, worn, and restless. You know that ain't a way to live. I don't care for being right. I don't know where to lay the blame. If I never measure up, would you love me just the same? The slow burn war of attrition. No tongues are held, no holds are barred. We supply the ammunition till all we share is one big scar. I don't care for being right. I don't care if I'm wrong. I just want to understand why we never get along. And you've been slaving for the money. You say we've got bills to pay, and there are mouths we've got to feed, and you don't see another way. And I don't care if you are right, 'cause it feels so wrong that two people with this love just can't seem to get along. The years have gone, the kids have grown, the ships all passed in the night. We were rearranging deck chairs, all that matter left our side. We don't have to have the answers. We don't have to shift the blame, 'cause if we never get along, I'm gonna love you just the same.